George, I think that you're probably like one of the most important figures when it comes to journalism in UFOs. And when you broke the Bob Lazar story, is that 89? When was that?
1989.
89. 1989, I remember reading about it. I remember hearing about it. I remember watching clips on television and watching countless Bob Lazar interviews. It all came out of you. I mean, did you think at that time, I mean, what was your thoughts about UFOs before you had met Bob Lazar, and how much did it change while you got to know him and hear his story?
It changed quite a bit. I had not really given it much thought at all. Probably the same level of curiosity as most people. You go about your life, you pay your bills, you go to work, you love your family, and it's always out there somewhere. Hey, I wonder what the deal is on that.
Right.
But had not really dwelled on it until it was a day in 1987. Into the studio comes a guy named John Lear. And I had heard sort of a little bit about him. His family was famous. His dad developed the Lear jet, the 8-track tape. John had run for the state senate, and he had a certain amount of credibility with our news organization, KLAS-TV, because he had helped us break a really big story. And the story was the stealth fighter, the F-117. He had told my boss, Ned Day, managing editor, about this amazing plane that was invisible to radar flying up in Tonopah in Area 51. We had an interest in Area 51, not UFO related, but Ned broke that story. It went national. So John Lear comes into the station one day with a stack of what turned out to be UFO documents. He plops them on Ned's desk and says, Ned, this is going to be the next biggest story, the biggest story in history. It's a UFO cover-up. Aliens are here. Technology's been recovered. Ned takes a look at it and says, I'm not doing this story. If it was true, I'd already know about it. This is crazy. Well, I'm eavesdropping, as I tend to do. I'm a curious person. So as he's going out, I said, Lear, let me take a look at this material. And I looked at it. I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. At the time, I was producing and hosting this little public affairs show, 30-minute interview show. It would air Sunday morning at 6 o'clock. Nobody watches it. It would be interviewing a city councilman, a county commissioner. What the heck? I'll put Lear on there. And I let him go. And he told me this big scenario about secret treaties with aliens and recovered technology and a giant cover-up. Some of the information sounded outrageous. Some of it seemed like it would be worth checking out. Suddenly, the phone starts ringing off the hook. I'm getting calls about people that, who was that guy? What was the deal on that UFO stuff? Is it real? I had him on again. 6 months later, the response was bigger. I had him on a third time with a guy named Bill Cooper. I regret that. And he told him an even more elaborate conspiracy.
He's the Behold the Pale Horse guy?
Yes.
Yeah, I read that book, and halfway through I was like, what in the fuck is this?
Yeah. He tied in the JFK assassination. And,
everything. Bases on the moon. Aliens are there right now.
He had this scenario where he had seen these documents when he was in the Navy, and he's going to tell the world about it, then he's going to go away. Well, every time he told the story, the documents got bigger and bigger, and anybody who criticized Bill Cooper became part of the secret government, including me. So we do this third show with Lear, and he hints that he knows a guy who might be going to work out at Area 51 and knows something about alien technology. That guy turns out to be Bob Lazar, but Lear didn't give me the name at that time. A couple months later, I am anchoring the 5 o'clock news on KLAS, and we have a nightly or evening interview segment, 5-minute segment, live interview. Our guest doesn't show up, and we're scrambling to find somebody to fill that hole. And I thought about Lear. So I called him up, not knowing what had been going on in Lazar's life or Lear's life. And I said, hey, is your that UFO guy you told me about, is he around? Would he do an interview? Just turned out that Bob had been through the ringer. A lot of stuff going on in his life. He felt threatened. And he said yes. We had to black out his face. We do this interview, and he spills the basics of the story. I worked out there at a place called S4. I saw 9 flying saucers in an underground base. This is technology that came from somewhere else. I'm in fear for my life. Holy cow, the phones start ringing off the hook. My news director comes rushing in, the station manager. Is that for real? What's the deal on that? And we realized we had touched the pulse of the public in a way that I didn't really understand. We arranged to go meet Bob Lazar, my news director, Bob Stodall, and I, that following weekend, and put him through a paces where we would ask him questions about his background and how he got the job. And we spent a couple hours with him, and we walked out of that meeting thinking, holy shit, what if this is true? This is really risky for us as journalists. It's risky for our personal reputations if it blows up in our faces and we do this story, and it would really damage the reputation of our news organization, which is KLAS is a jewel. It's always been a leader in Las Vegas, one of the best TV news operations in the country. We're putting a lot on the line. Well, look, we decide, let's take our time. Let's look into this guy's story. And then in order to understand Lazar, we'd have to look at the bigger picture of UFOs. So I started a cram course on ufology, and I read everything. And I spent 8 months like cramming for a final exam that never happened. I read everything. I interviewed people. That same year, MUFON had its international symposium in Las Vegas, and there all the world's UFO people came right to me. I got to interview them, traveled around, went to Los Alamos. Lazar took us into the lab. We took cameras in there. He walked us around, waving to people. We didn't even have to stop for security. Took us into the lab like it was a rabbit going through its own burrow. He knew his way around. We were allowed to take a camera in there. We put those stories together, put them on the air in November, and man, it just went through the roof. Every night of this 9-part series, people got the audience got bigger, phones ringing off the hook, people calling, giving us information. Suddenly, it's on something called Paranet, which was sort of a precursor to the internet, and it was huge. And it changed my life for sure. I had no idea that there were so many people out there interested in the topic, and I was hooked. And I really got hooked on Lazar not only because his story. Personally, I was interested in him. We became friends. I saw what happened to him after that live interview, and in the 7.5 months before we went and I revealed his identity, people were really messing with him. I mean, you cannot convey what it was like, how weird it was then, breaking into his house, leaving the windows open, messing with things in his home, breaking into his car, leaving the doors and windows down, just messing with his head.
And you think that was the government that was doing that?
Yeah, I do. I think so. And then, so I had put out a call to people, hey, I want other people to come forward.
This was before his identity was revealed.
Yeah,
we should explain this.
I am actively seeking information from the public. If you ever worked at Area 51 or S4, you know anything about this, you're at Nellis Air Force Base, reach out to me. So I started getting calls, and 6 people right in a row who had talked to me on the phone and offered to give me information were visited right after the call. One of them was a guy who did tax returns for people at Nellis Air Force Base, and he had got to know these guys really well and got information about crashes. There was a guy who was a golf pro at Nellis who had gone on road trips with officers and told him about this weird stuff out at Area 51 that seemed to be from somewhere else. He gets visited and told to shut up. There was a lady who worked in the court system. A cop told me about her. And I talked to her on the phone, and she had worked at the court system, but before she had worked for a company called Holmes and Narber, which is a defense contractor. And she said she sat in as a stenographer in these meetings and heard these conversations between the government contractors and Air Force officials about crashed saucers. And they would, after the meeting, they take the tape out of the typewriter and destroy it and take all the notes. And she agreed to tell me this story. It was just a tiny piece of the story. The next day, she's visited by these 2 guys in suits. They tell her, look, you are still subject to your security clearance. I hope you know that. And then they said, we know you traveled to L.A. to see your daughter, and we know she comes here. It's a big desert out there. It'd be terrible if something happened to either one of you. This lady is scared shitless. She didn't make that stuff up. So 6 people who had offered to give me information on the phone, one right after another, get visited. And it made me mad. It also made me mad that dealing with, trying to fill in pieces of Bob Lazar's life. Now, I know there's some gaping holes. I know it better than anybody. I've had to deal with it for 31 years. But I always thought if he worked at Los Alamos in classified projects in a scientific or technical capacity, then it would make sense that he could get hired into a program like S4 as somebody who thinks outside the box. Despite personal shortcomings or whatever, they might bring somebody like him in to help them crack a problem that they hadn't been able to resolve themselves. So I focused on Los Alamos. I knew he had been there. I talked to people who remembered him from being there, but the lab kept telling me, no record of him. He's never here. And then I showed him, well, look, I've got the Los Alamos newspaper. It's a small town paper. There it is on the front page, a front page story. Bob Lazar, physicist, Mason facility, Los Alamos lab. It's a story about his jet car. Nope, still have no records of him. And then I found his name in the phone book from the era when he was there. He's in the lab phone book. he had been hired by a company called Kirkmeyer, which is a company that's a headhunter that fills positions at Los Alamos and places like that. So great, I'll reach out to Kirkmeyer. They said, yeah, we hired him. Yeah, we've got records. Can I get it? Can I get his employment records that would show where he went to school, whatever information you guys had? Yes. A couple weeks go by, nothing. Couple more weeks go by, I call him again, I start writing them. I've got a stack of letters that thick. It went on for 2.5 years, and finally, by the end of it, they said he was never here. We don't have any records. That pissed me off. It made me mad, and I think that is really what got me hooked in the story, is that I was being jacked around by government and national facilities like that.
We should explain the Los Alamos thing, because the Los Alamos thing coincided with him doing work at MIT, right? Is that correct?
That's how he's explained it to me. Yeah,
and the way he explained it to me, I don't think I'm at liberty to say what the project was, because the project, the way he was describing it, is essentially internationally illegal, like what they were working on. And that's one of the reasons why he was saying, he explained what the project was. It sounded very feasible, also very evil. And then it was basically a weapon. And then he said that this was the reason why there was no actual record of him studying at MIT. It wasn't important that he got a degree. It was important that he understand the technical specifications of what they were attempting to accomplish.
That's my understanding as well. Yeah. And, it's always been the most problematic part of his background. And it's where a lot of people in the Bob Lazar story, that's where they stop.
But the thing is, when you listen to him talk and when he describes things, it's very clear he's educated.
Oh, he's a brilliant guy. Yeah. But I had always told him, and Bob, you're my friend. I want to have a conversation with you about these claimed degrees, because I didn't believe that he'd ever sat down. In those days, you go to a college like MIT or Caltech and get a degree. You've got to take classes in something other than science. I could not imagine Bob Lazar taking an English lit class to save his life. But he is a brilliant guy. I'll give you an example. In April, COVID thing is raging. My wife and I are staying at home. We're getting packages delivered for food and things of that sort. I'm a little worried. They didn't know about contact, whether you can get it off of cardboard boxes or whatever. And I mentioned to Bob in a phone conversation, I'm thinking about buying one of these UV screener systems. He goes, wait a second, don't buy one. I think I've got the parts that I can make you one in my garage. And a week later, it arrives. This thing, he's got it in his garage, handmade, this big scanner with these UV things that works. He just whipped it up in his garage.
I'll remind you, you got the scanner. I got a laser gun.
Right.
You got a laser gun?
I did, man. It is super powerful. So it's like a handheld toy that he retrofitted with a superpower. So I'm like lighting shit on fire in my house.
So it looks like a handheld toy, but it's actually a real laser?
It's a toy with full noise, but he put a diode in there, and it's super powerful. Like it can light shit on fire. My wife hates that shit. So I got the laser gun.
You also got the flamethrower, though. Lazar made a flamethrower. This is before your buddy Elon made flamethrowers.
No comment on that.
Yeah, well,
it's a massive
flame. He made a flamethrower.
Massive.
Yeah, he's obviously a very intelligent man.
Yeah.
When you listen to him talk, there's no bullshitting going on. When he talks about talks about undeniable, concrete things, when it comes to science, when it comes to elements, when it comes to propulsion systems, he clearly knows what he's talking about. And the really confusing thing for people that are detractors is he really hasn't changed his story in 31 years. It really is the same story. And that's really hard to do. So you're working there, and while you're working there, you're under this crazy schedule. Forgive me for explaining your story, but you would get these phone calls. You would have to go to the airport at 11 p.m., and your wife started thinking that you were having an affair.
Yeah, apparently so. Now, I did give my permission to have, as part of the, security clearance process, I gave written permission to have the phones monitored and things of that sort. So they weren't doing any covert stuff. They, with any Q clearance, which is civilian top secret clearance or military top secret clearance, they go talk to friends and, places you've been, make sure you're not connected to foreign countries. But, monitoring your phone is nothing unusual. However, they insisted that, you don't even talk to your loved one, to your partner, to your wife, whatever, about what's going on. So she was essentially in the dark and didn't know the phone was being monitored. Well, part of the security clearance is that not only do you not have any connections to foreign countries and aren't a maniac, but you have to have a stable home life too. Well, she started having an affair with a flight instructor. Now, they were monitoring this on the phone, and they knew it, and I didn't. So they stopped me coming in, and their attitude at the time was, we need to see how this is going to play out, and if Lazar is going to get a little weird or anything. So let's just, hold him off from coming in and, see what happens.
And they explained this to you, what was happening?
Well, after the fact, yeah, because time kind of went on, and there were guys that were following me around, and I started getting a little concerned, going, well, shit, are they booting me out of the project? And if so, they're not just going to let me hang out at home and go get a new job knowing what I know. So as time went on, I started getting a little concerned, and I took my closest friends and just kind of got together, and I said, hey, remember that job I told you about? This is what's going on. And you don't need to take my word for it. Wednesday night, we need to all go out here. I want to show you what's going on. So I took everybody, and we went out to, remember, since I had the test flight schedule, and went outside the base, out into the desert, and so everybody could see, one of the high-performance tests. And, it left quite an imprint on everybody, so they knew I wasn't
And there's videos
crazy.
of these tests, right?
Yeah, but remember, this is it's in the dark in the 80s with a big monster-sized camcorder, and you got, a bright light jumping around. But, we did video of it, but there's no, by today's standards, it's...
But is
it's
your
garbage.
video specifically available, the video that you took?
Yeah, well, George Knapp has it.
Is it
I give
online?
it to him.
Do you know?
I have no idea.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I show clips of it in my film. It's
Right.
it's online, and someone did a deep analysis of it. It was interesting to take a look at how.
Pull this microphone up to your face. Keep it about a fist from your face.
All right. To see how his video looks now, but as far as video evidence, I mean, we are talking 80s camcorders. The most important thing is the human story here. Everybody that he took up there on 3 separate occasions, they don't all like each other. They don't all talk. They all agree on one thing. They saw something that night at the exact point in time and space that Bob Lazar said. And remember, this is 17 miles south of Area 51. No one even knew really about Area 51. We're talking Papoose Lake, and they all agree. They saw something that night they had never seen before, and they've never seen since, right when he said it. So that's one of the 6 things where I'm like, how did he know? You can dismiss him. I tried to dismiss it. But some things we can't get around, and there's about 5 or 6 of them. How did he know about those?
If Jamie wants to find that video right now, what would he look under?
Bob Lazar, UFO, S4, Area 51, just kind of like that. So it's like the S4 UFO video, Bob Lazar, and a guy does an analysis, but you're analyzing these 80s videos.
Right.
He from the very beginning, Bob never said, I have proof of my story and I'm going to tell the world. He said at the very beginning, I cannot prove my story. That's not why I'm telling this. George Knapp convinced him to tell people, and he lived through it, and I didn't believe it either until I talked with George.
Okay, so you filmed this test flight, one test flight, and then you get caught.
Actually, it was, I think, the 3rd time, because we went out there the first time. Everybody saw it. Everybody was amazed because it did some radical maneuvers, and everybody had a lot to say about it.
Maneuvers that I've seen the video. It doesn't. I don't think there's something we have now that does that.
No,
in terms of a human piloted craft. I mean, I don't know, obviously, with the government.
No, it's impossible. Nothing can move like that. And remember, we didn't start filming from the very beginning. We were waiting for something, to happen. The craft took off and then came flying at us, stopped, turned at a right angle, flew back, and then, after it did some, amazing stuff, we to get the camera, and then we started filming. So it doesn't have all of it on there; it just has some.
The way I describe it to my friends, and they said, "What does this look like?" I said, "Take a laser pointer, and then have a wall, and then move it around the wall. Like, how it moves around the wall? It doesn't seem like it has anything to do with inertia or physics, or it's not impeded in any way by the atmosphere."
Yeah,
that's what it looked like.
You're essentially separated from reality, as crazy as that sounds, with being encased its own gravitational envelope. inertia is not going to affect it. And this is how some of those recent sightings of Commander David Fravor, I'm sure you've heard of the
Yes.
Tic Tac UFO. I mean, he describes exactly the thing operates exactly the way I was describing. That's why he was interested to talk to me. But we saw this, and on the way home, it's like, hey, we got away with it. We should try it again the next test flight day. So this became a thing to do. And I think it was on the third time that we got caught. I mean, we started becoming a little careless. I think we took a motorhome out there. And, I mean, it was like the stupidest thing you could
Took a
possibly
grill,
imagine.
started tailgating.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. And
Again, you're in your 20s.
yeah, and what was funny was we went out there, and my friend Gene Huff and I were leaning on the front of a vehicle, and just for some reason we just started talking shit. Like, well, I hope they realize that I don't remember what we were saying, but that something about attacking the base or something along those lines and stealing the craft or something like that.
Something crazy.
And then about 20 feet in front of us, we see a little green light fall on the ground and roll to us. And unbeknownst to us, now it's pitch black. You can't see your hand in front of your face. There were a bunch of guards standing right out there, and they had a night vision scope where they were like from here to the wall looking at us, listening to us. And the guy dropped it, and the scope rolled over to us, and you could see the green screen. We turned the lights on, and all these guys are there. So it was...
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. So we did incredibly stupid stuff and got caught, as we should have. Cause it was
So
stupid.
when they catch you and they bring you in, then what happens?
Well, I went in for debriefing. The following day, I went to Indian Springs Air Force Base, which is kind of a defunct base that they used to use at the nuclear test site. And this is when they brought out the transcript of the phone call with my wife. And they sat me down and we said, when we meant to keep the secret, we meant you can't tell your friends, right? And it just being sarcastic and trying to. Mm-hmm. And then they got real serious. But this is where they, took the transcript out and were reading me what my wife and, our friend were talking about. And I don't know, it was a hard time.
So what happens from there? What do they do with you? Why don't they arrest you?
I don't know. I don't know why. I'm not sure they knew what to do, but they did let me go that night, and I went home. And this is kind of when the most stressful part started.
Because you're realizing that you're being monitored 24/7.
Now I know not only am I being monitored, but now I know I'm in trouble. And it wasn't a short time after that I contacted, at that time, the only investigative reporter I had heard of in Las Vegas was George Knapp. And, told him some of the story because I had no idea what the hell was going to happen at that point.
So George Knapp tries to dissect your story, tries to find holes in it, tells it, puts it online, and makes everybody aware of it, and that's how I found out about it.
Yeah, to make a long story short. Yeah.
What happens, to really make a long story short, what happens from there on? I mean, do they contact you and say, hey, Bob, it's probably a good idea if you shut up? Do they try to label you as crazy? Was there...
There were a lot of things that happened at, between that point. I'm leaving out a lot of stuff to fill in the story. We'd have to go back to Los Alamos and well, I really don't want to talk about that. The
top secret weapons stuff that you were working on.
No, I'm talking about the 115.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. I have to think about how I'd.
What is the problem with this?
I don't want to get myself into more trouble by admitting something. So I just have to dance around a couple.
He was rated just during the filming of the movie. People thought it was
the movie's great, by the way.
Thanks, Joe.
And it's on Netflix right now if anybody wants to check it out.